Have you ever noticed how some of the biggest political arguments in America come down to the simplest questions? Sometimes all it takes is 5 minutes of questioning to completely change the direction of a hearing. I just watched a clip that has been making the rounds, and honestly, I went into it expecting the usual political talking points. Instead, I saw something that caught my attention. Representative Nancy Mace started asking a series of questions that seemed so straightforward that I found myself wondering where the conversation was going. The witness answered yes over and over again, and by the time it was over, I think a lot of viewers probably walked away asking themselves whether the debate over voter ID has been framed honestly. Stick around because we're going to watch through what happened together, break it down, and discuss why this debate still matters so much today. Welcome back to the Political Brief. If you enjoy in-depth political analysis, conservative commentary, and breaking down the biggest moments from Washington without all the unnecessary fluff, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like and let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I read your comments every day, and this community always brings some great perspectives. Now let's get into what happened.
Representative Nancy Mace for her 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank Ms. Thompson. I was a state lawmaker for 3 years before I came to Congress. I represent the 1st Congressional District of South Carolina, and South Carolina has had its own history, very bad history with black South Carolinians, black and brown and African Americans. I recently took a vote to move statues like Supreme Court Justice Taney, removing his bust out of the Capitol Rotunda because he wrote the Dred Scott opinion, the one that said that black and brown and African Americans could not become citizens of the United States of America. I voted to move, someone like Wade Hampton, who encouraged the murder of over 150 black South Carolinians during his run for governor. And so I appreciate your comments about the 60s. I was not around then, but I've watched and read a lot of the history and seen the videos and seen the moments of violence against black America. So I applaud your work on that. My understanding is you were elected in 1972 in Texas. Is that correct?
It is correct.
Right, and I applaud you for making history, I imagine, in Texas and being a strong voice for black men and black women. Coming from South Carolina, we've got voter ID. And I'm assuming Texas is the same way. Do y'all need IDs to buy alcohol when you're purchasing at the store?
Yes, to be sure that you are capable of doing that.
Right. Do you need an ID in Texas to buy cigarettes?
You can't buy them unless you're at least 21.
But do you have to show an ID to buy cigarettes?
You have to show an ID.
Do you need an ID when you're getting a job and trying to get on payroll in Texas?
Yes.
Do you need an ID to go to the pharmacy and get a prescription in Texas?
It depends on this prescription.
But do you need an ID for some prescriptions
Yes,
in Texas?
Yes.
Do you need an ID to get Social Security services in Texas?
You do.
Do you need an ID to rent an apartment in Texas?
Yes.
Do you need an ID if you're going to buy a house and finance it via a mortgage in Texas?
Yes.
Do you need an ID in Texas if you're going to board an aircraft and fly commercial?
Yes.
Did you fly commercial or fly a private jet on the way to D.C.?
A chartered plane.
Do you have to show an ID when you fly in a private charter jet?
Yes.
I wouldn't know. I've never flown on one. So did you need an ID to get in the building here today?
Yes.
Do you need an ID in Texas to open a bank account?
Yes.
To cash your check if you're working. Do you know, Representative Thompson, what percentage of blacks in Texas, black and brown African Americans, are registered to vote?
Oh, a huge percentage.
70%. Do you
Yes.
know what percentage of African Americans, black and brown Texans, have voted on average or in the last election?
About 64%.
Correct. Do you know how many whites are registered to vote in Texas?
Far more than African Americans.
72%. You have 70% of blacks in Texas who are registered to vote. You have 72% of whites in Texas who are registered to vote. Do you know the percentage of whites who turned out to vote in recent elections?
I want to say over 50-some percent.
65%. Yeah. Do you know what percentage of Hispanics are registered to vote in Texas?
No, I do not.
63%. Do you know what percentage of Hispanics voted in the last election?
I think it was over 40%.
53%. Hispanics are not voting in as high a numbers as blacks and whites in Texas. Do you know the percentage of Democrats that support voter ID?
Would you repeat your question?
Do you know the number or percentage of Democrats who support voter ID in this country?
I do not, but I don't think it's a whole lot.
72%. Do you know the number of black and brown and African Americans in this country who support voter ID?
No.
75%. Do you know the number of Hispanics that support voter ID in this country?
No.
81%. Do you know where the state of Texas is ranked with black voter turnout in this country?
Would black voters turn out?
Mm-hmm. Do you know where Texas is ranked?
Oh, about 44%.
The latest numbers that I read this morning was that Texas is ranked 10th. Do you know where Texas is ranked? So then top 10 in the country. Do you know where Texas is ranked with women voters?
Oh, way up in the 50s.
In the bottom third of this country. So I would argue that Texas has a more difficult problem with getting women out to vote than black and brown and African Americans. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go to Congresswoman Robin Kelly.
So here's the scene. Nancy Mace has her 5 minutes to question former Congressman Bennie Thompson. Right from the beginning, she does something that probably surprised a lot of people. Before she even gets into voter ID, she talks about South Carolina's history with racism. She acknowledges the state's past, references voting to remove historical statues connected to slavery and segregation, including the bust of Chief Justice Roger Taney, and even talks about Wade Hampton and violence committed against black South Carolinians. Whether you agree with every historical decision she mentions or not, it was interesting because it immediately took away the argument that she was trying to ignore America's racial history. She openly recognized it before pivoting into the issue she actually wanted to discuss. And she changed gears. Instead of making a long speech, she started asking simple questions. Do you need an ID to buy alcohol? Yes. Do you need an ID to buy cigarettes? Yes. Do you need an ID to get certain prescriptions? Yes. To open a bank account? Yes. To rent an apartment? Yes. To finance a home? Yes. To fly? Yes. To get into the building? Yes. Question after question, the answers remained exactly the same. Now, watching this unfold, I couldn't help but notice something. Nancy Mace wasn't trying to overwhelm the witness with complicated legal arguments. She was building a simple point that millions of Americans immediately understand. If our society already accepts identification requirements for so many everyday activities, why is voter identification treated as uniquely controversial? That's the central question she wanted viewers to think about. Now, obviously, if you listen to the other side of this debate, they'll argue that voting is a constitutional right, not simply another transaction. They'll say that even small barriers can disproportionately affect some communities. That's been the argument for years. But here's where I think conservatives often have a strong response. Rights don't eliminate the need for verification. The Second Amendment exists, yet you still verify identity when purchasing firearms through federally licensed dealers. You have constitutional protections when traveling, but airports still verify identity. The Constitution protects your property rights, but banks still verify who you are. Verification isn't automatically suppression. That's an important distinction that often gets lost during political debates. Then Nancy Mace shifts to statistics. She asks about black voter registration. She asks about Hispanic voter turnout. She asks about white voter turnout. She points out that roughly 70% of black Texans are registered to vote, compared to 72% of white Texans. She also highlights Hispanic participation. Again, her argument wasn't necessarily that turnout is identical among every demographic. Her point seemed to be that minority registration numbers themselves are relatively high, challenging the claim that voter ID laws prevent registration on a massive scale. Now here's where things got even more interesting. She asks Bennie Thompson whether he knows how many Democrats support voter ID. He doesn't. She answers with 72%. She asks how many Black Americans support voter ID. He doesn't know. She responds with 75%. Then Hispanic Americans. She says 81%. Now, if those numbers are accurate, and they have been reflected in several national opinion polls over the years, they challenge one of the biggest assumptions in this debate. Because sometimes when you watch cable news, you would think voter ID is one of the most divisive ideas imaginable. Yet polling has often shown broad support across racial and political groups, although support can vary depending on exactly how the question is asked. That's worth paying attention to. One thing I always tell people watching this channel is not to confuse what politicians argue about with what average Americans actually think. Those are often two completely different conversations. Another part of this exchange that stood out was when Nancy Mace pointed out Texas' ranking in voter turnout. Initially, there was disagreement during the exchange over where Texas ranked nationally for Black voter turnout. She ultimately stated that Texas ranked in the top 10 according to figures she had reviewed, while also arguing that Texas had a larger challenge encouraging women to vote than increasing Black voter participation. Whether those rankings remain current or not isn't really the broader point. Her broader argument was that low turnout isn't always evidence of suppression. Sometimes turnout reflects campaign quality, voter enthusiasm, competitive races, education, demographics, or dozens of other factors. That's something political analysts across the spectrum acknowledge. Now here's my perspective as someone who leans conservative. Election integrity should never be treated as a partisan issue. Every legal vote deserves to count. Every illegal vote cancels out someone else's lawful vote. Those two principles should exist together. When Americans believe elections are secure, confidence increases regardless of who wins. And confidence matters, because once people stop trusting elections, the foundation of representative government starts weakening. That doesn't mean every voter ID law is automatically perfect. If states require identification, they should also make obtaining valid identification straightforward and accessible. Those two ideas can absolutely coexist. Secure elections, accessible voting, those are not mutually exclusive goals. I also think one reason clips like this spread so quickly online is because they're easy to follow. Nancy Mace didn't rely on complicated constitutional theories or lengthy speeches. She asked ordinary questions that most Americans encounter in everyday life. That's effective communication. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, or independent, people naturally compare similar situations. If identification is accepted for dozens of everyday activities, many will naturally ask why voting should be treated differently. Others will respond that voting deserves unique protections because it's a fundamental constitutional right. That's the debate. And honestly, that's exactly why hearings like this are valuable. They force competing arguments into the open where the public can judge them. One thing that concerns me about modern politics is how quickly people assume disagreement equals bad intentions. You can support election integrity without wanting to suppress voters. You can support expanded voting access without supporting fraud. Unfortunately, social media often pushes everyone toward the extremes. Watching this hearing reminded me that the better conversations happen when people actually explain their reasoning instead of shouting slogans. Nancy Mace clearly wanted to challenge what she sees as inconsistencies in the arguments against voter ID. Whether she persuaded every viewer is another question entirely. But she certainly asked questions that millions of Americans are already asking themselves. Now I want to hear from all of you. Do you believe voter ID strengthens confidence in elections? Should every state require photo identification to vote? Or do you think there are better ways to protect election integrity while maximizing access? Leave your thoughts down below, because I genuinely want to know where this community stands. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the Political Brief, and turn on notifications so you never miss our coverage of the biggest political moments happening in Washington. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.